Hey guys, it's Alora, long time no see. Today I am here to talk about the books that I read in June and the books that I am planning on reading in the month of July. So let's start with what I read this past month. The first book that I read was Amy and Rodgers' Epic Detour by Morgan Matson. Now, I had previously read one other Morgan Matson book. I hadn't loved it, but this was her more famous book, and so I decided to give it a shot anyway. It's a road trip book, kind of multimedia. There are playlists included in this book, which I found to be pretty fun. Overall, unfortunately, I didn't feel attached to the characters at all. So I think that I ended up giving this book only a 2.5 or 3 stars out of 5. I really didn't enjoy it all that much. It could just be that I'm not a fan of road trip books. If you haven't heard of this book, it's about this young girl named Amy, and her father has just died, and she is tasked with driving this car, herself, and a bunch of stuff across the country to where her mother has just moved their family. And it's basically supposed to be a fresh start for them, but Amy doesn't really want to go. She ends up having to drive with this boy named Roger, who she doesn't really know, but he's a friend of the family who's grown up. And it's their story of their journey together. And it's a physical journey, obviously, but also an emotional journey. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely feel free to check it out. It just wasn't necessarily for me. I'm over here reaching for the next book. The next book that I read I don't actually have a physical copy of, though. I had a physical copy, but I lent it out to my dad because I thought that it was something that he would enjoy reading. And that book is called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, I believe is how you pronounce it. And this was actually pretty fun, pretty interesting. This was a book that combined quantum physics, so you had the idea of the multiverse, with a romance with a thriller. I would say it was mostly thriller with a lot of physics and a little bit of that love aspect. This was a story about a man who is married pretty happily, has a great kid, a lovely little family, and he's a physicist, but he never went on to really be great. He didn't develop his potential, and that was something that he always kind of regretted. And so one day he gets kidnapped and taken through this portal to another reality where he was the scientist. He made the decision not to be with the woman that he ended up marrying, and he had all of this fame and glory, but he really just wants to get back to his wife and son. So it's a story of him trying to figure out how to make it back to his family, and I really kind of enjoyed it. So like I said, a lot of thriller aspects, which isn't something that I would typically pick up, but I found this one to be quite fascinating. What else? The next book that I read, I actually listened to on audiobook, and that was Mastering Your Mean Girl by Melissa Ambrosini. This is a reread for me. I really enjoyed it the first time I read it. It's just a women's self-empowerment type book, and there are a lot of worksheets in here, which I found to be cool, but I wanted to listen to it on audiobook because Melissa Ambrosini is Australian, and she has this fantastic accent, and I wanted to listen to it. So I reread it / listened to it. It was still amazing. I still really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend, 5 stars for sure. After that, I read what I think is the best book that I have read thus far this year. I did not expect to enjoy this book nearly as much as I did, but it was fan-friggin-tastic, and that is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. I am planning on doing a review of this book, just this book, because it was so amazing and I really enjoyed reading it. I think that you should read it if you like dark fantasies. The characterization was great, the narration was great, the setting was fantastic. It was all just, very high quality, above par, amazing work, and I would highly recommend it. If graphic scenes in any sense of the word bother you, you might want to steer clear of this one. It's not YA, even though the main character is 16. I would say it's definitely an adult fantasy book, but it was very well done, and I would highly recommend it. 5 stars for sure. I've pre-ordered the second book, God's Grave, and I just can't wait for it to come in, so really looking forward to September when that comes in. The next book is a fan favorite, and I finally finished listening to it. I was listening to it on audiobook, and that is A Court of Wings and Ruin. Is that the third one? The Court of... I had to go find the title of it because I couldn't remember. Court of Wings and Ruin, the third book in Sarah J. Maas's adult fae fantasy trilogy. sort of a trilogy. I don't really want to give away any spoilers at all. If you haven't read it, I absolutely adored the second book. The first one was kind of a little bit slow for me. It wasn't my cup of tea necessarily, but I got through it. I read the second one, loved it. It was fantastic. And then this third one took me 2 months to listen to. Granted, it was a 25-hour long audiobook, so, you know, it was quite substantial, but it didn't have the same oomph that the second book had, and I don't want to give anything away, but I think I ended up giving it a 4 stars, maybe a 3.75. I don't know, it's a little bit hard to decide on a 5-point scale, but it wasn't quite as good as the second one. There was something missing from it, definitely a certain flair that just was not there at all. But it was still enjoyable, and I still had a good time listening to it, so if you're looking for a new fun fantasy series, that one's a good one if you like fairies, and again, don't mind graphic scenes. The next book is a little bit of a fluffy one, and that is Always and Forever Lara Jean by Jenny Han. This is also the conclusion to a trilogy, so yay me, pat on the back for finishing lots of trilogies this month. But it's been a while since I read the first two, so there were definitely some plot points that I had forgotten about that I'm sure I would have appreciated more had I more recently read the first 2 books. But overall, I still really liked this. Jenny Han is so sweet. She took Lara Jean through a nice character arc in this book, and I don't want to give away anything in case you haven't read the first 2. The first book in the series is called To All the Boys I've Loved Before. The second one is P.S. I Still Love You. And Lara Jean is just a really fun character. She's Asian American. She loves to bake. She has 2 sisters and some really great friends, and it's just a fun high school summery read. So I would recommend this series if you like those kind of light, fluffy books. The final book that I finished reading in the month of June is another one that I've been working on for quite some time, but I'm really pleased that I stuck with it and finished it, and that is Unaccustomed Earth by Jhumpa Lahiri. Now, she is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize for her work The Namesake, which I haven't read, but this is a collection of short stories. There are 7 short stories, and it's about feelings of displacement, I would say, of not being where you should be. And it's predominantly about Indian Americans, people who have emigrated from India, immigrated to America, and who just don't feel quite at ease, don't feel quite at home. And it's not just about their country of origin. All of these stories are very different and distinct. They all have main characters that are very well developed even in such a short period of time. She did a really great job of writing them and making them feel real and alive. And I would say that each story really felt like a little slice of life, as if we didn't have a full arc, we didn't have a beginning, middle, and an end, but we just kind of were seeing into a piece of someone's life, and that made it very real. It made it very emotional. It was slow reading for me, but it was beautiful writing. So it wasn't that I didn't like the writing, it was the kind of writing that you really have to mull over. So I would read a sentence or a paragraph, and then I would want to just sit there and think about it for a minute, because she placed the words together in such a way that you really wanted to take your time and think about why she put the words together that way, because it wasn't normal. It wasn't just easy flow type writing. It was very intentional and very eloquent, and it just takes time to read is all. So I finally finished it. I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it a 5 stars, even though it took me 2 months to read. Woof! So I read a total of 7 books in the month of June. That took me a lot longer to talk about than I expected it to, so I'm going to really quickly talk about the books that I'm planning on reading in July so that this video doesn't become way too long. The first book that I'm planning on reading this month is The Circle by Dave Eggers, and I have heard nothing but bad things about this book. Literally nobody has enjoyed it who has read it that I've talked to, and everybody who I know who has seen the movie has been disappointed, so I'm not really sure why I'm reading this, but I've already started, so I'm going to finish, because I finish books that I start, and guess we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know what I think at the end of the month. The second book that I'm hoping to finish this month is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I'm actually listening to this on Audible and it's narrated by Claire Danes. She has such an intricate voice, it's very multifaceted, and I'm really enjoying it thus far. So I'm definitely going to finish it. It's a pretty short audiobook, I think only about 10 hours long, and then I'm hoping to watch the new, is it Netflix or is it Amazon? The new show for The Handmaid's Tale, but I've never read it before, even though it's basically a Canadian classic and a dystopian, utopian, anti-utopian type classic, but I hadn't read it yet, so I'm quickly working my way through that one. And then my life has been pretty serious lately, so I'm hoping to read some very fun, light reads, the first of which is going to be Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I talked about this in last month's TBR, didn't get to it, ended up reading Nevernight instead, which was completely worth it. But anyway, as I've explained before, I absolutely love the movie that was done by Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli for Howl's Moving Castle. It was so enchanting and delightful and just I loved it. If you haven't watched it, stop what you're doing right now, go watch it today. It's amazing, definitely worth your time. So I'm hoping that the book version doesn't let me down on this one. I'm hoping that it's just as whimsical and fun. I'll let you know what I think. And then finally, in the month of July, I'm hoping to get through Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the illustrated edition. I'm trying to get through the Harry Potter books again. I guess I'm not really in a rush because I might as well wait for Christmas time for the third book, The Prisoner of Azkaban, to come out in this illustrated edition. But I really have been feeling like I want to dive back into the world of Harry Potter. I've only actually read through them all once, and it was as they came out. So I started when I think I was about 5 years old or something like that. So these early books I don't really remember much of at all. So I'm trying to read one of the books and then watch the accompanying movie, and we'll see how long it takes me, but I'm not in a tremendous rush. I just want to get through them again someday. So I'm hoping to work on that this month. Alright, thank you guys for listening to me and sharing this time with me today. I hope that you are all doing really well. If you have some fun books on your July TBR, let me know down in the comments below what you're planning on reading this summer month. And yeah, I hope to see you guys very soon. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy. Bye guys.